Hello, and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. Thanks to all of you who are joining us on the Nurse Shark Academy page and those that are joining us on our Facebook Baxter Professional Services page. But also thanks to those of you who are tuning in from YouTube. And don't forget to tune in every week at 5 on Wednesdays where we go live and we talk about what's happening in healthcare, nursing, and news, and of course, business and entrepreneurship. Thanks for coming and tuning in. We always like to start off our show with our daily affirmations and inspirational quotes. So I have our very first one here. It says, once we believe in ourselves, we can risk curiosity, wonder, spontaneous delight, or any experience that reveals the human spirit. Once we believe in ourselves, we can risk curiosity, wonder, spontaneous delight, or any experience that reveals the human spirit. And that's from E. E. Cummins. Our next inspirational quote is from Sylvia Plath. I take a deep breath and listen to the old brag of my heart. I am, I am, I am. I took a deep breath and listened to the old brag of my heart. I am, I am, I am. Sylvia Plath. And then lastly, let me get this out the way here. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above the water. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above the water. That's from Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud. So I just like to share those and think about that, especially that last one. When you think about our mind as an iceberg, I think for me, what he is saying is that we have only tapped into the barest minimum of our potential as a human being. We don't know where we're going to go and how far we can go unless we give it a try. So that's how I choose to take it today. So tap into that potential that you have, expand your mind, and let's go ahead and get into the news. All right. So this is a story, and I mentioned this in our newsletter this week. So you aren't a subscriber to our newsletter, hop on over to the nurseSharkAcademy.biz and sign up for our newsletter every week or every couple weeks. But I want to share this with you because this is a story that just broke my heart when I read it, and I wanted to share it. So this is talking about Maya Kowalski, and it's called Take Care of Maya trial. Doctor who prescribed ketamine treatments testifies in a 220 million, there we go, $220 million cases. The whole thing has got on my mind. It's hard for me to even speak. Okay, so this came out in Fox 13 News on October the 10th. This is what it says. It says, one day after Maya Kowalski, the teenager at the center of a $220 million lawsuit against Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, took the stand, the doctor who diagnosed Maya with complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS, and prescribed ketamine treatments testified in court. According to Dr. Anthony Kirkpatrick, who took the stand Tuesday afternoon in front of the jury after initially answering questions without a jury present about videos Maya's mother, Beta Kowalski, took in the fall of 2015. The judge ruled Dr. Kirkpatrick did not give his consent to be recorded on the two dates in question. When the jury was called in, he told them that Maya was in extreme pain and couldn't walk when she and her mother sought his expertise. He said a light touch blowing on the skin is perceived as being painful. She had that. She had a bad case of it. He diagnosed her with CRPS. He prescribed a series of a lower dose treatments of ketamine, a pain medication, which Maya said helped, but not enough. That's when Dr. Kirkpatrick recommended a high-intensity treatment in Mexico, which he said was a success. Dr. Kirkpatrick said he discussed Maya's condition with Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. He said he emphasized that if she doesn't get the ketamine, it's going to be a slow, painful death. However, the hospital disagreed with the treatment. During an emotional day of testimony, Maya, who is now 17, told the jury about her experience being in state custody at the hospital for 3 months and eventually being allowed to leave after her mother, Beta Kowalski, died by, and I should have mentioned a trigger warning for this, by suicide after being kept away from her daughter for 87 days. On Monday, Maya told jurors that the day her mother took her life, she had a sickening feeling that something bad had happened. She goes on to say that she's very angry because of the amount of time she was taken away from her family, and that she was allowed to spend time with the family the day her mother passed away. She said it was actually so unbelievably cruel, the amount of time they allotted for me to spend with my family after hearing such awful news. On Monday, Maya Kowalski took the stand in the Take Care of Maya trial and told the jury about her experience being in state custody while at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital for 3 months. Last Monday, jurors were read 2 notes that Maya's mother left behind before she took her own life. She left 1 note for her family, another note for the judge overseeing the custody decision. In her note, she said that the judge destroyed her family and her marriage and caused the family to go bankrupt because he kept her away from Maya. Maya's family is suing the hospital, claiming that its actions and the actions of DCF drove Beta Kowalski to take her own life. So this is what happened. So just to kind of give you the background of what's happening with the story and why I find this so heartbreaking. In October 2016, they took Maya to Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital when she had a flare-up of pain from her CRPS. Maya told jurors her condition would leave her screaming in pain and unable to walk at the time. So she had received ketamine during a series of insurance treatments in Mexico, which she was told there was a 50% chance of death. She had the treatment and it seemed to work and she was improving until she had a flare-up in October 2016. When she arrived there, her mother, Beta, insisted they received ketamine at Johns Hopkins All Children, but the staff disagreed with the treatments. Her persistence alarmed hospital staff, and they called Child Abuse Hotline, and they suspected that she, Beta Kowalski, which is why this story really hits hard, was a registered nurse, was making her daughter sick. When the hospital's attorney, Howard Hunter, began his opening statements, he noted that several hospital staffers believed Beta Kowalski suffered from Munchausen by proxy, and they were trying to protect her. A judge ordered Maya to be sheltered at the hospital while the child abuse allegations were investigated. She wasn't allowed to be discharged to her family or another treatment facility and could not see her mother. So essentially what they did in this case, allegedly, is barred her from receiving the care that she had received previously, but also then cut her off from her family. So according to Maya, the 3 months that she was in state custody, there's a 48-hour period where she was isolated in a hospital room. She said staff wouldn't help her to go to the bathroom and instead tried to see if she could actually walk, but she couldn't. She said they left me there for 48 hours under surveillance, which they did not tell me about. They had a commode in there and they just put it far enough away from the bed, so I would have to physically stand up and use the bathroom. I called the nurses whenever I had to use the bathroom because obviously I'm not able to walk. And when they refused to help me to go to the bathroom, I would defecate on myself. She described some nurses as mean and unhelpful, and others were compassionate and willing to help. So she testified all of this, and she said most of them would say, well, it's in your head or you're making it up. Jack Kowalski, Maya's father, testified last week that his family was told they would be arrested if they left the facility with Maya. So this is a tragic, tragic case. So Maya Kowalski's father, Jack, described the pain his daughter was experiencing as she suffered from CRPS when he took the stand on Monday in the case. And this is why I'm kind of going more over this. This is, again, tragic all the way through. And according to him, he said the hospital personnel, and specifically this one social worker, was limiting her freedom. Why that was, I don't know. But that was clearly her goal, to isolate the child from her family and her lawyer. And that's according to their attorney, Mark Zimmerman. So it says, could they violate the orders, Mr. Zimmerman? Asked the defense attorney. They were interpreting the orders, so they were complying on the orders based on their interpretation of the orders, said Zimmerman. So the hospital was also featured in a Netflix documentary calling Take Care of Maya. So I haven't watched the documentary, but this might be something that you may want to look into. So the battery allegations for the Kowalski family stem from Beatty, this is the social worker, and others holding Maya down for unwanted photos and unwanted comforting. Ugh. So again, if touching her skin caused pain, that's just terrible. She wanted to describe how she met Maya and accused her mother, Beta Kowalski, of having Munchausen by proxy, but admitted she was not an expert in the disease and stated she only worked with 3 similar cases. Beatty said she saw Beta Kowalski demand ketamine for her daughter, although the hospital says it believes the ketamine treatments were too dangerous. Beta admitted that the facility did not take into consideration that Maya had been prescribed the ketamine treatments. So again, this isn't something that she hadn't been prescribed, hadn't taken before. She had been. And there's concerns again about the risks and all of that. So there's a lot to this story. I would love to read the whole thing to you, but I can't. But this is just a heartbreaking story to me, and this is a case of where I think sometimes that wanting to help can go wrong, and we don't know enough about CRPS, and so I think this is something that we definitely need to look into. And so if you want to watch the documentary on Netflix, you can. But I just shared that because it was just such a heartbreaking story to me. Okay. All right. Let's go to another story. This just came across my newsfeed today, and I was just flummoxed by how this happened. But okay, this is coming from Black Enterprise. And it says 75K settlement reached for nursing assistant tackled by police for, get this, jaywalking. All right, let's get into it. It says a $75,000 settlement was reached in connection to a black nursing assistant who was tackled and arrested by an officer in Snohomish County in Washington State in March 2020 for jaywalking. The woman, who was 25 at the time of the incident, was identified as Sharon Wilson. Deputy Matt Lease allegedly brought her down to the ground after she attempted to cross the street. She was trying to catch a bus. So apparently, the outlet noted that Lease claimed Wilson jaywalked across Highway 99 at an intersection. Well, he had the green light, but he had to slow down his car because she walked into the crosswalk as she was trying to catch the bus. And they said the signal to walk across wasn't on. So the outlet says that Lease commanded Wilson to wait on the bus bench and told her she could not leave. Now, she's trying to get across the street to catch a bus. Jaywalks, okay, maybe cuts in front of him, all right. But he's like, okay, I'm just going to stop you and keep you there. So the community transit pulled up to the bench where Lease had stopped his car to speak with Wilson. The officers reports that the woman pleaded with Lease to let her get on the bus, but he told the nursing assistant, who had just left his shift during the COVID-19 pandemic, that another bus would come and that he needed to identify her. So again, this is I'm going to show my authority situation, right? And to me, again, having read the story, this is like a case of road rage, honestly. I mean, an honest mistake was happening, and it sounds like a case to me of road rage. But here we go. So security camera footage from the bus showed that the then 25-year-old attempted to run to the bus. Lease tackled her and held her down with his knee. Wilson reported being in an agonizing amount of pain because of her hypersensitivity to contact from having sickle cell disease. So again, this is a case of not knowing what's happening. So she was arrested for resisting arrest and obstructing law enforcement. Why was she arrested? For jaywalking? That's usually just a ticket, if you do that. The lawsuit filed against the sheriff's office in federal court in March stated Ms. Wilson tried to explain that she had not heard any commands because she was wearing headphones and could not hear over her music. The outlet reported a man who had gotten on the bus that Wilson missed gave another account of what happened. He said that the nursing student had crossed the street while the light was red and that Lise was giving her a hard time. The nursing assistant spent one night in jail working on the front lines of COVID 19. She shouldn't have gone to jail because she was immunocompromised and she could have contracted COVID 19 and all of that. So, of course, the incident happened around the same year that George Floyd was murdered, etc. So, Wilson called the officer racist. Lise denied that he was racist. However, their settlement was reached. So if you want to read more about this case, it's out there on other outlets as well. But it just struck me that this was a case of someone who was aggravated because she walked across the traffic and he had to slow down. What? So you're going to throw somebody down on the ground and you're going to identify them and do all that you have to do. Obviously, she's readily identifiable. She's in scrubs, man. You know she works as a nurse or something. She's in scrubs. Give me a break. Anyway, so yeah. So I brought that up to say, people be aware of what's going on around you. But this kind of is another level of disrespect that we sometimes get in the healthcare profession. But I'll go on. All right. So speaking of disrespect, let's just hop across the world into Europe. We just celebrated, or some people just celebrated Halloween yesterday, right? This is a time of people getting into costumes and things like that. And I made a running joke at work that one day I'm going to get a t-shirt printed that says, "This is my sexy nurse costume," right? So it'd just be me in a t-shirt and some jeans. But anyway, I digress. So in Spain, I think this is awesome. This is from The Guardian. There's calls in Spain to stop selling the sexy nurse Halloween costume. Thank you. So it says Spain's General Nursing Council has called on retailers to stop selling sexy nurse Halloween costumes, complaining that the outfits damage the public's perception of the profession and perpetuate a sexualized, trivial, and frivolous image of women. The council, which represents 330,000 male and female nurses across Spain, said the costumes had no place in modern and egalitarian society. It also criticized zombie and killer nurse outfits, saying they did nurses few favors either. I can see that too. And by the way, as a person who plays video games, that trope is very present in the video games where you have the sexy nurse zombie. That's there. I've seen it. Okay? Just want to bring that up. All right, here we go. So it goes on to say, as people prepare to celebrate Halloween and All Saints' Day, the General Nursing Council regrets the proliferation of costumes that have offensive and degrading connotations as far as the profession is concerned. Take, for example, the very short and sexy nurses' outfits that bear no resemblance whatsoever to real uniforms. And then there are the outfits bathed in blood, the killer ones and the living dead ones, all of which are now typical of this celebration that has become so entrenched in our country, especially among children and young people. The council renews its call for shops and online retailers to stop selling costumes that, quote, paradoxically link death and murder with professions whose job it is to cure and look after people. Female and male nurses don't like having to endure the annual wave of sexy nurse, killer, or zombie nurse costumes as it bewilders and offends them. The council's president, Florentino Perez Rea. These outfits damage the public image of a profession whose dedication demands not only top-tier academic and university qualifications, but which is also recognized as a bastion of healthcare quality. The council said parents and other people had an important role to play when it comes to tackling harmful images of nursing. Vice President Raquel Rodriguez Llanos goes on to say, we're not criticizing Halloween It's also parties, stag parties, private parties, and carnivals. We're calling on all mothers and fathers not to dress their sons and daughters in costumes that are offensive to the profession, because that's how these practices become normalized and are carried on into adulthood. It says nurses in Canada also issued a similar plea last year, saying the costumes, quote, eroticization of the profession was socially and professionally unacceptable. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I have had a problem with the sexy nurse trope for years, not because I don't believe I am not a sexy nurse. That, you know, but when you have to worry about being assaulted when you go to work, or possibly, verbally assaulted because of these tropes that we continue to put into our society as a profession, that also um, makes it look like we are not as professionals, that we didn't take years to study our craft, that we don't have the academic rigor to be in healthcare. It's that whole putting nurses in their place, the dumb nurse, the ditzy nurse, that whole trope that I find highly offensive. Don't get me started on that. We can go on that a lot more. But I just want to applaud Spain. Kudos to you, and also Canada for last year. And this is something that we should continue to address every year until it takes hold. All right. Because you get things like this. This is a story. This came out from McKnight's Long-Term Care News. This is on other outlets. And I happened to catch my interest is because it says direct care doesn't hold nursing students' interest according to a survey. It says nearly 60% of today's nursing students envision careers that take them away from direct patient care, even while they're still in school. Let's just stop there again. So even while they're still in school, as a nursing student, they're already thinking about getting out. I'm like, what, right? That was a stop. I'm like, wait, how could that be? You just started nursing school, and now you're already thinking of leaving the profession in the bedside. But let's get into it. So it says, Elsevier Health released the third installment of its Clinician of the Future 2023 Education Edition series Monday, looking at the experiences of nursing and medical students. It pinpointed consequences of ongoing pressures on frontline workers when it comes to the country's healthcare system. I said 23% of students are considering quitting their undergraduate studies, while 54% are worried about their mental health. Already, 57% of students believe they will suffer from clinician burnout, and 65% worry about clinician shortages. Perhaps most striking is that 58% say that their studies are, quote, a stepping stone toward a broader career in healthcare that will not involve directly caring for patients. Sherry Dornberger, Executive Director of the National Association of Directors of Nursing Administration, told McKnight's Long-Term Care News on Monday that many of today's students are interested in pursuing advanced practice nursing degrees rather than bedside nursing. She says they want to skip bedside nursing due to the shortage of staff and getting beaten, threatened, and harmed by patients and residents and family members. They are getting their APN so they can set their own hours and get paid more for their worth. Many are also getting master's degrees in administration to be nursing home administrators and vice presidents of nursing, chief nursing officers, or work as legal nurse advisors, consultants, or whatever else they can do working remotely. It's very sad, but I can see why they're pushed in this direction. And so, yet again, we're seeing these things happen. This isn't nothing new. This, of course, is causing problems for long-term care facilities, hospitals, et cetera, to find staff. And then now that we're pouring money into getting more nursing students into the pipeline, those nursing students are saying, hey, I'm not staying at the bedside long. I want to move on and do other things. So this is what brings in this here, this next article from Axios, and it says CDC outlines first plan to address widespread health worker burnout. Okay. So, in a new plan, it says from the Division of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention comes amid heightened scrutiny of the routine practice of asking workers in high stress professions about their mental health. Experts say that these questions have created widespread barriers to seeking help. Most recently, an incident involving an Alaska Airlines pilot who was charged with trying to bring down a flight spotlighted the challenges for pilots face if they seek mental health help. Professional organizations like the American Medical Association have called for state medical licensing bodies and other healthcare systems to remove questions on applications that might deter physicians from seeking treatment for mental illness or substance use disorder. Here's what people are saying. A lot of people say, I can't do that. I can't avail myself of that because otherwise I'm going to lose my job. And in some cases, lose your license. Helping healthcare workers take care of their own mental health was among the recommendations from a new campaign launched Tuesday by NIOSH and the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation to push health system leaders to address the burnout problem. The campaign stems from a 2022 law aimed at protecting health workers who suffered from record burnout and increased harassment coming out of the pandemic. What they say is what we're launching formally is the emphasis on the employer, the manager, the frontline supervisor, the health system CEO. Look at the way you're organizing your work. He pointed to a tool available on a commonly used electronic health record called a signal report, which can easily help managers see how much time clinicians are working outside of their scheduled shifts and address the problem. There's been this incredible influx of capital expenses borne by hospital systems over the last 10 to 15 years, yet there has been very little investment in optimizing that tool for the workforce itself. It said it's still important to consider whether health workers' mental health concerns may impair their ability to currently perform their job. And so there's a lot of things that are coming out of that. So I'd say we're going to look to see what happens with this. There's more in this story if you want to look further onto that. But this is why I bring up these stories over and over again. Here's another article that came out, just switching a little bit, and our news topic. This is a case of alleged Medicaid fraud, and I bring this up because I want us to be aware of how easy it is to fall into these traps if you're not careful with your billing practices. So this is coming out of Arkansas. It says psychiatrist who once ran Arkansas State Medical Board arrested for alleged Medicaid fraud. An Arkansas psychiatrist who once ran the state's medical board has been arrested for alleged Medicaid fraud. An affidavit filed with the arrest warrant and obtained by NBC News alleges that Dr. Brian Hyatt built Medicaid for its most expensive billing codes while he was running the locked behavioral unit at the Northwest Medical Center in Springsdale, even though investigators concluded that he was rarely in the building. So again, these are where some of those issues come up. Hyatt was arrested by the Rogers Police Department on Monday. In a statement after the arrest, Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin said, "My office has made arrangements with Dr. Hyatt's attorney for Hyatt to appear in the Pulaski County for a bail hearing later this month." More than 40 former patients have accused Hyatt in civil lawsuits of having imprisoned them against their will while he was running the locked behavioral unit from February 2018 through May of 2022. All right. So it goes on to say Hyatt's contract with the hospital was abruptly terminated when Medicaid fraud allegations first surfaced in May of 22. He stepped down as chairman of the state medical board this March and then resigned from the board altogether in May. The affidavit lays out an Hyatt is accused of billing Medicaid for treatment he didn't provide. The affidavit is signed by a Medicaid fraud control unit investigator for Attorney General Griffin. So this is what happened. A confidential informant told the Attorney General's office that Hyatt had, quote, little or no contact with patients and, quote, did not want the patients to know his name. The confidential informant also told investigators that Hyatt's unit allegedly used, quote, chemical restraints when patients were not an imminent danger to themselves or others. Aaron Cash, a lawyer representing dozens of clients who sued Hyatt, alleging wrongful imprisonment, told NBC News, our clients were relieved to learn the news about Dr. Hyatt's arrest warrant and are thankful to the Attorney General Tim Griffin and the Medicaid Control Fraud Unit for their work in helping to find justice for the many victims of his scheme. At the time, Hyatt's civil attorney did not respond to requests for comment, so I don't have anything from them, and a criminal defense attorney was not listed in court filings. So it says attorney for Hyatt had told Arkansas Business in August that Hyatt denied the allegations made against him and maintained his innocence. He said despite his career as an outstanding clinician, Dr. Hyatt has become the target of a vicious, orchestrated attack on his character and service. He looks forward to defending himself in court. So it says that when Hyatt began running the unit in 2018, there were 29 beds. By last year, he expanded it to 77 beds. In an interview with state investigators, Hyatt said of his interactions with patients, quote, I would see everybody and look in on everybody. But the Attorney General's office used video from 40 security cameras to track Hyatt's time over 46 days in the unit and found that he spent 70% of his time in his office and just less than 1% of the time seeing patients, or less than 10 minutes. In April, the hospital agreed to pay back $1.1 million in a settlement with the Attorney General's office. So again, he is innocent until proven guilty, but I'm just bringing it up because this is how sometimes these things happen where you're saying you're present in the building, but you're not present seeing the patients. And I'm not sure who was actually rounding on the patients or if they were being seen at all. It does not say, but this is a case kind of worth watching to see what happens. Okay, so let's bring it a little bit. Let's bring it a little bit back into nursing here because this is an article that came up. And this is from KOMO News about in Virginia. And it says state investigates violence against nurses at Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And this is, again, kind of what we've been talking about. So this, is coming out of Seattle, Washington. So it says the state is investigating claims that Seattle nurses are being attacked by the people they work to help. Nurses at Virginia Mason Franciscan Health report the hospital isn't doing enough to prevent the violence and they're demanding action. The Washington State Nurses Association, the WSNA, filed a complaint Friday with the Washington Department of Labor and Industries, requesting a comprehensive investigation into workplace violence against nursing, calling into question the hospital's violence prevention and record-keeping practices. Pamela Chandran, the labor counsel to the WSNA, says to take basic industry standard precautions, visitor registration, weapons detection, the use of dogs. Kimberly Travis Carter says she's been physically and verbally attacked while helping people throughout her 20 career in the emergency department. The WSNA provided the following examples of reported incidents. And I just want to say that some of this is pretty shocking, so just be prepared. On October 21st, 2023, a nurse witnessed a patient care tech, a PCT, in the violent chokehold of a patient. The nurse hit the panic button and approached the scene. It took the nurse and two other staff members to free the PCT from the chokehold, and the nurse was thrown against the wall in their effort to free the patient. The patient was eventually contained by staff members, none of whom were security personnel. On July 12, 2023, a nurse was stabbed by a patient with a metal butter knife, resulting in an emergency department visit. The incident is documented in a safe staffing complaint and the nurse's statements in a recent Seattle Times article on a picket and workplace violence issues at Virginia Mason. On July 11th, 2023, a patient's husband was acting unruly, was searched by security, and was found to have a gun in his bag, incident documented in the staffing complaint. A nurse reported being bitten by a patient in an incident occurring on July 18th, 2023. In September of 2022, a nurse was attacked by a patient with a hammer, which barely missed their head and broke a hole in the wall. In responses to the allegations, Virginia Mason Franciscan Health Division Vice President for Marketing and Communications, Kelly Campbell, writes, "Our nursing staff play an invaluable role in caring for patients, and we recognize the challenges they experience as part of our frontline teams. Virginia Mason Franciscan Health is committed to ensuring a safe and high-quality workplace for our dedicated employees. We address any safety issues immediately as they occur and involve law enforcement as needed for escalations. We continuously work to ensure a secure environment is provided for everyone." So it says, still Travis Carter worries what it would mean in her career if nothing were to change, and so do many nurses. So it looks like the labor and the LNI had confirmed it has already opened an investigation of workplace violence at the hospital on October the 11th. And so this is why I talk about these things. And here, this is interesting. This is some of the comments. This is not my comments, but this is some of the comments because I have actually comments on this article. So curious. It says physicians and nurses, this is from Seattle Doc, says physicians and nurses are assaulted at every hospital, admitting homeless, drug addicts, and alcoholics. Staff at Harborview, VM, and Swedish are too frequently the victims of Seattle's negligence in ensuring public safety. So I'm going to actually show this to you because I want you to see that, yes, it is not me saying this. I'm going to share my screen because you need to see the comments. All right, so here's the next comment. This one is from GB 1960. Nurses are frontline workers. Adequate staff and security is vital. Enough with the promises, Virginia Mason. Time to put those words into action. This is Blippy Dip, who says, why pay for the needed protection when they can just pray for it? Mariposa De Palma says, gee, no wonder I've been abused by 3 nurses. Oh, well, she's a patient. I guess they feel like victims, but then they're taking it out on me. I totally get it now. Well, you know what? Apparently there was a comment that violated the policy, so it was kind of taken down. And so those are some of the comments, but I want to say there's public discourse about this. And there was a comment a while ago, a couple of days ago, that I saw on Instagram, and it had to deal with a patient feeling like she was being abused by the nurse because the nurse was rough or mean or whatever she alleged. And it was interesting to watch the dialogue between those that were saying, well, you know, it should never be. And I'm not saying nurses should be rude or mean or anything like that, but I'm just saying, you know, how was she coming across to the nurse? There's always 2 sides to that story. And it may seem like at the time that you're angry and upset and the nurse may appear to be gruff or mean, but maybe they're just stating a fact and you're hearing something you don't want to hear. And I'm not saying that there are people out there who are mean, nurses that aren't doing their job, because there are, and we talk about those too. But I just think that sometimes we need to go back to how we perceive the nursing profession and how we're letting these stereotypes come out, and then what the expectations are for the patient when they come in. You know, violence is never an option. It should never be an option. So I'm just thinking about all those different things. So let's move on to another story. I've got 2 more before we get to some good news. I always like the end of the good news. But this is Representative Zach Nunn introduces a bill to address the nursing faculty and staff shortages. And so I like to let you know what's happening around the country. So in Des Moines, it says April May, a nurse in the Des Moines area for 16 years, says she has never seen such a shortage in the nursing staff. May, the immunization director at the Primary Health Care Inc. said Staffing shortages were at their worst during the COVID-19 pandemic, and gaps are yet to be filled in the workforce. The shortage affects both the patients and the staff, she said, who are getting burnt out with no reprieve in sight, and burnout can cause nurses to leave the profession, creating even more open positions. And as we can see, it can also cause some anger, resentment, and maybe some lashing out in some cases when you don't deal with it, because there's a lot of issues that goes into that. So, U.S. Representative Zach Nunn said Friday he is working to address the shortage with new legislation that will push for a federal plan. This is not state, but a federal plan to expand nursing education. He said in a news conference at Primary Healthcare Inc. in Des Moines. The Train More Nurses Act, introduced by Nunn and Representative uh, Dina Titus of Nevada, would require the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to develop a plan to increase capacity at nursing schools through grant programs. Nunn also provided May with a Congressional Medal of Merit for her work as a nurse in the community. Nunn said in 2021, nursing schools turned away nearly 100,000 applicants due to a lack of teachers. This means that there are 100,000 people who could have filled workforce gaps in the healthcare industry, but were barred from doing so. The Iowa Primary Care Association CEO Aaron Todd said medical facilities and healthcare institutions across Iowa are experiencing staffing problems from rural to urban areas. And this is something that's happening across the nation. So it's not just in Iowa, but in other places. So Nunn said he hopes that this bill would lead to more rural and underserved Iowans to having access to the care that they need. So this would be great if we can get more support for the nursing schools. But then again, we also need to look at when they get out of school, let's make it an environment they want to work in. All right. Speaking of making it an environment people want to work in, let's talk about this next two real quick. This first one, just to let you know, because it is coming up and I want people to have a chance to let their voices be heard. The public is invited to comment on the Biden nursing home standards proposal. This is coming out of Cincinnati, WKRC. The clock is ticking for the public to weigh in on proposed new nursing home standards. The goal of the new Biden administration proposes to boost staffing and care. Two local experts say that this is needed, but it does not go far enough. Linda Kurdoff, the program director of the Cincinnati Pro Senior, says there are some good things in here, but there's one area, the minimum staffing standard, which is really inadequate. It's her job to visit nursing homes and advocate for the families. It goes on to say the new proposal for the Department of Health, we've talked about this before, would set the minimum standard of 33 minutes for a registered nurse and 2 hours and 27 minutes from a nursing aide, or 3 hours total for each resident per day, which is kind of low when you really think about it. Our message is that the minimum staffing standard needs to be 4-to-1 hours or greater. What would do that? Add an extra hour per day, said a local 12 asked. It says there are studies that show that when the level of care is at a minimum of 4.1, you have better outcomes, so things are like fewer falls. Other changes in the new proposal is that one registered nurse will be on duty at all times. Currently, it's only required that an RN be present for 8 hours a day. The chair of the Office of Geriatrics for UC, Irene Hamrick, thinks that new mandates are needed because even though people are living longer and are healthier, those in nursing homes have more complex needs, which is true. This is so different than what we had 20, 30 years ago when I started as a CNA, right? So we'll see how this works out, but just to let you know that is open for your comment. So take the time to make your comment known. And then I want to talk about a happier story where there is a nursing home in Japan that are using toddlers to spread cheer. So this is great. This is coming out of a story out of Japan. I thought this was wonderful, from NBC News. And it says once a week, Rina Shinohara heads off to work, clocking in for a shift at a job one could say she was born to do. Rina is 18 months. She's a baby worker at a Japanese nursing home, hired to brighten the days of residents whose own grandchildren may rarely visit. Tasho Ijoro, and I may be mispronouncing these words, and I do apologize. It says, says, it energizes me to see them so that it really helps me. He's about one of the 100 residents in a nursing home in that city. The patterned little feet around wheelchairs and walkers here is meant to ease the isolation that can come with growing older, especially in a shrinking and rapidly aging nation where a third of the population is over 65. Loneliness is such an acute problem that in 2021, the Japanese government appointed its first minister of loneliness, charged with helping people of all ages connect, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. The nursing home's director, Kimi Gondo, came up with the idea of baby workers 3 years ago when her own newborn granddaughter was visiting and she saw how happy it made the residents. She says, when I saw the elderly people smile, I realized the power possessed by infants. The nursing home now has about 70 baby workers who can inspire even the toughest residents. Just by seeing a baby walking around, they smile and they start to speak, Gondo said. The Pint Sign team works flexible hours, strolling around the nursing home with their parents, mostly mothers. It's funny, I'm not working, but Rena has a job, said her mother, Kana Shinohara. Rena and her colleagues are paid in diapers and ice cream. But those are not the only rewards, said Shinohara, who started bringing Rena to the nursing home when she was 5 months old as a way to meet new people after the family moved to that city. Here she gets to interact with kids her age and also with grandfathers and grandmothers who are a bit more difficult to come across. These are great life teachers. I think this is wonderful. The recruitments for Gondo's recruits are simple. They should be under 3 years old, and the less they speak, the better. That's because older people can struggle to speak and communicate, Gondo said, especially if they have cognitive impairment. In order to communicate on the same level, words are unnecessary, she said. For nursing home residents, Gondo, the visits from toddlers evoke the common Japanese experience of family members from multiple generations living under the same roof. Even if they enter a facility like this, they should be able to interact with people from various age groups on a daily basis. I think that's only natural. Wow. I think that's wonderful. She says, Shinohara says she hopes Rena can continue working at the nursing home for as long as possible, although some days are harder than others. Occasionally, there are days like today when she cries, her mother said, and I think, oh, she's really working hard. I think that's a great idea. I think that's wonderful. I think that helps the the youngsters to not feel isolated from older adults and get used to being around people who are older. But it also helps the older adults to engage and to have that generational connect. And I think to me that does a lot better than a plastic baby doll. So kudos to them. All right, so here's another interesting and happier story. This is Texas A&M's nursing school required commitment to diversity and inclusion for faculty hires. This is kind of an interesting story that came out. It says Texas A&M University School of Nursing set a threshold for showing a, quote, commitment to diversity and inclusion to hire faculty according to documents. A handbook for faculty search committee members revised in February set diversity, equity, and inclusion standards for recruiting and hiring new faculty members. The guidelines encourage having applicants write essays on their, quote, personal commitment to diversity and inclusion and how it informs their past and future professional contributions. According to the document, which has been obtained through a public records request, this shows applicants that diversity and inclusion are core values for your department and college, adding that hiring committees can add their own standards on how to weigh commitments to DEI and hiring, but to consider setting a minimally acceptable score for DEI commitment statement. It added that it's a stronger statements which demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of the key DEI issues in academia as experienced by members of underrepresented groups and provide detailed descriptions of activities and plans, while weak statements would only demonstrate a simplistic understanding. It says, quote, this is a perfect example of how the importance of Governor Greg Abbott's signing the Senate Bill, I think it's 17, into law, which contains critical reforms from the restoration of merit and educational standards for higher education in Texas. From Laura Morgan, the Do No Harm program manager and nurse for 39 years, told the Washington Examiner, "My concern is that the Texas A&M School of Nursing is racing against the clock to firmly entrench pro-DEI foot soldiers into the faculty prior to the January 1st cutoff date." So this is going to be interesting to see this debate back and forth, but I think this is how I look at it. I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. And I think that it's something that we should embrace. How much easier is it to have a nurse in let's look at the hospital unit, for example, because I can look at my own practice. It is so much easier when I have an MA that's working for me that is of the same culture of the patients that are coming into my clinic. When I had a nurse that could speak a language, we have a high Burmese population in our clinic. And I had an MA that could speak their language, knew their cultural customs, could help me translate what was happening. So that I could understand why they chose one avenue to do things another, and to make sure they're actually answering the questions appropriately, because maybe they are wanting to tell me things that maybe they think I want to hear as opposed to what I need to hear, right? And so having that cultural person there also gives the patient the opportunity for them to feel like they're being heard. Yes, we have interpreters. Don't worry. We have interpreters there. That's not the issue. But I think sometimes seeing somebody that looks like yourself, coming from your same background, kind of eases that burden when you're entering the healthcare system. The same way as a student coming into an environment where it would be nice to have support programs from people and faculty that look like you, that can help you understand some of those cultural things that might be keeping you from being successful in the school. And I can tell you from personal example how difficult it is sometimes to navigate nursing school when you have that added pressure of being the only one in the program. That's tough. Or being one of the only ones in the program. And so if there's 3 of you and 2 of you wash out, what does that leave you with? And so you have to think about those things. And is it that they leave because of economic issues? Did they leave because of other things? I give a good example. I was going to school, undergraduate, my first degree in biology. And one of my good friends had to stop out and change schools, not because she wasn't doing well in school, but she just couldn't afford to pay for this very expensive private Christian school. I had another colleague who was on his way to becoming a teacher, and he had to stop out and transfer to some other school because he couldn't afford the funding to go, right? And I say that because it happens over and over again. We've seen students that maybe have come from poor economic backgrounds that aren't prepared for being in an academic environment. And if this is your first time ever leaving home and living with people you don't know, people who talk about your culture and don't accept you, it could be a problem. I remember there was one group that they were marginalizing one of the students because she ate with a lot of curry. That was her culture. That was her food. But we had people turn up their nose and talk about her and things like that. This is why it's important to have that representation. This is why, so that we can learn to get along. And we can learn to appreciate each other's culture and appreciate one another, and then recognize the commonalities that we all share, and then celebrate the differences. Okay. I'm off my soapbox now. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, and then we need to go home. We need to talk home. We're running out of time, but there's a lot of news today. And I really want to get onto this because this just came out with Fox 59. And it says Indiana ranked ranked 10th worst state for healthcare due to high costs and poor outcomes. So here we go. Burgeoning costs, declining healthcare outcomes. These are just a few of the reasons why Indiana ranked so poorly in a study conducted by Forbes Advisor that reviewed the healthcare quality of all 50 states. The inaugural study ranked each state according to 24 metrics, spread out across four key health categories. The study assessed the metrics based on healthcare access, outcomes, cost, and quality of hospital care. Each category was measured on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 representing the worst performance. Indiana received a score of 79.01 out of 100 based on those categories, meaning that the Hoosier state finished as the 10th worst state when it comes to facilitating the healthcare needs of its inhabitants. Indiana reportedly has an average of 12.59 primary care physicians who are available to provide care for every 100,000 residents. Hoosiers also pay an average annual premium cost of $1,774 when it comes to single health insurance coverage through an employer. The study outlined several other metrics, with Indiana receiving a score of 66.17 for its healthcare access and a score of 74.43 for healthcare outcomes. It did rank slightly higher when it came to healthcare costs, with a score of 85.76, meaning that many Hoosiers struggle to afford health care due to high costs or lack of coverage. However, Indiana received its lowest ranking in the category measuring its quality of hospital care with a score of 31.02. Indiana lawmakers passed multiple measures earlier this year aimed at reducing healthcare costs. House Enrolled Act 1004 stipulates that third-party contractors are obliged to assess the charging costs of nonprofit hospitals to determine how they compare to 285% of the Medicare reimbursement rate. So it says, in contrast, Minnesota received the best ranking for its healthcare capabilities. The study acknowledged that Minnesota's favorable healthcare outcomes were in large part due to the state having the fourth lowest total of influenza and pneumonia deaths, with a rate of 7.03 per 100,000 residents. Minnesota also had the highest number of critical care nurses and certified nurse anesthetists. The state also ranked high when it came to the proportion of residents lacking healthcare coverage, recording the fifth lowest percentage of residents lacking coverage. And also, North Carolina ranked as the worst state when it comes to healthcare costs, while Utah was the worst state in terms of healthcare access. New Mexico reportedly recorded the worst quality when it came across hospital care, and Mississippi was the worst state for its healthcare outcomes. So you can certainly see more on this on Fox 59, but I wanted to share that with you as well. All right, so some more bit of in good news. I've got two big stories of nurses making a difference, and this first one is a nurse out of Georgia, I believe, Texas. Colleen Nurse becomes the first Black woman inducted into the Academy of Emergency Nurses. First of all, that kind of shocked me right there. The first. But I want to say congratulations. So Shantae Harris started a career in nursing in 2000 because she wanted to help people. She worked as an emergency nurse for years and in 2006 opened Imminent CPR to help train others. Her hard work and dedication to the field for the last 23 years were recently recognized on a national level when she was inducted into the Academy of Emergency Nurses. The program was started in 2004 to highlight nurses making a huge impact on the industry. She says, when I was approached as a potential candidate to be inducted, I was like, oh, am I worthy? Have I done enough? How do I feel? Harris said. Then I looked at the other members of the Academy. I was like, oh no, there's no one else who looks like me. I will be making history if inducted. She did go on to make history as the first Black woman to be a part of the Academy. She says, it feels amazing to know that I've broken the ceiling so other nurses of color know they can. Their work is great and exciting, has global impact, is sustainable, and they'll see someone that looks like them. Harris says she hopes to inspire not only current nurses of color, but also encourage more people to join the industry because diversity in healthcare is so important. She says, my goal in the Academy is to keep doing what we've done. We want to diversify the Academy, create mentorship programs so that others feel comfortable applying and help them through. So I think that's Great. And she is one of our nurses making a difference. And now we have one other set of nurses who are making a difference. And I just thought the story was also inspiring. So it says, after a decade of homelessness, six sisters pursue nursing dreams. Six sisters, aged 19 to 25, from New York, have overcome a troubled upbringing and are on the road to becoming nurses. According to an exclusive interview with People, the Lawrence sisters became homeless in 2013 after their parents lost their home. They survived by going between houses of friends and family members. The constant moving made it difficult for the girls to finish school, so they enrolled in homeschool instead. It was challenging, Lauren, now 24, told People. There were a lot of very bumpy, depressing times. In 2019, all six sisters earned their GEDs and began studying at Nassau Community College. After 2 years, they enrolled in sunny Downstate Health Science University with plans to attend nursing school. Having faced and overcome more than their fair share of life's curveballs, the Lawrence sisters credit their strength to faith. It's been an adventure, explained Danielle, 22. But what really pulled us through is our faith in God and each other. So I want to say congratulations to those that are nurses to be, and I wish them all the success in the world. And they are also our nurse making a difference for this segment. And this now ends all of our news for today. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Nurse Shark Academy show, to the Nursing You Can Use show. But don't forget to tune into our Nurse Shark Academy show, where we interview and highlight nurse business owners and nurse leaders. Coming up on next week, we have our CPR certification renewal. So those of you who are needing to get your CPR renewed, go to the Nurse Shark Academy, to our Baxter Professional Services Health Education page, sign up for our CPR certification renewal. Also, we have coming up this month, we have a TB training class, and that will be on November the 29th. That's the end of the month. We have our TB training class. So you can sign up for that at Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com. Then we also have coming up on November the 8th, that's just next Wednesday, we're going to have our Anderson Alignable Alliance of Anderson networking meeting. This is online. So if you want to join us on that, head over to our Alignable page for our Anderson Alliance, and you can register for that. So for all, and that's open to all business owners, small business owners in the Anderson, Muncie, Fishers, Carmel, basically Central Indiana, or anywhere. You can join us for that event. It's going to be our Quick Connect event. So that's at noon on November the 8th. And then on November the 29th, this is after the Thanksgiving holiday, come out and let's take a break. We're going to meet for lunch at La Nueva Charreta. That's over by Anderson University. We're going to meet for lunch at 11:30. And you can join us for lunch there and network with small business owners in the area. So just keep an eye out on our pages for all of our events that are coming up. I want to thank you. And then lastly, before we go, I'm going to invite you to join me for our 30 Days of Gratitude Challenge. So every day on Instagram, I'll be going live and sharing what I'm grateful for. And I encourage you to do the same. So go to your Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, wherever, and go ahead and tag us in your posts and share what you're grateful for. Every day we're going live to share what we're grateful for 30 days. It's our 30-day of gratitude challenge. Join us for that as well. Don't forget to follow us on our YouTube channel at the Nurse Shark Academy show, where you'll also find this show, the Nursing News You Can Use show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, don't forget to go on over to the nursesharkacademy.biz and join us for some great events that are coming up. And just to put a quick plug in, yes, in January, the end of December, beginning of January, we'll be starting our beginning of the year an end of the year review. So we'll be having that special challenge coming up to get you kickstarted for 2024. So if you want to get into the Kickstart 2024 challenge, keep an eye out for that. So that'll be coming up soon, and we'll be getting that information out. And just let me know and leave me a comment if you have anything that's happening in the community you want me to put out on this show. Let me know. I'll be happy to share those events that we have coming up in the community. That's it for me. Bye bye for now. Thank you for tuning in each week, and we'll see you next week at 5.